Most people think not having enough is a poverty problem. Make six figures and the anxiety stops. Make seven and you're free. Make eight and money never crosses your mind again. That's backwards. 54% of people making over $500,000 a year report feeling financially insecure. Billionaires work 80-hour weeks chasing the next billion. Tech founders worth 100 million can't sleep because someone else raised a bigger round. Here's what's actually happening. Munger calls it simple arithmetic. Happiness equals reality minus expectations. When you make 50,000 and expect 50, you're content. When you make 5 million but expect 10 because your neighbor has 15, you're miserable. The math is brutal. If your expectations grow 15% annually and your wealth grows 12, you're getting poorer psychologically every year, even as your bank account grows. If you don't understand why this equation dominates your life, you'll spend 40 years climbing a ladder that never ends, optimizing for a target that moves faster than you can run, and wake up at 65 realizing you sacrificed everything real for something imaginary. Here's why enough is the most important number you'll never calculate, and why your psychology is engineered to make sure you never find it. We're sold a story from birth. Money solves the problem of never having enough. Just one more promotion, just one more zero in the bank account, just one more deal, and finally, you can relax. The anxiety will disappear. The constant calculation of whether you can afford something will stop. You'll be free. And look, the story makes sense. When you're making 30,000 and rent takes half of it, the problem is money. When you're deciding between fixing the car or buying groceries, the problem is money. When you can't take a vacation without maxing out credit cards, the problem is money. So the logic extends. If lack of money creates anxiety, more money eliminates it. Linear, simple, obvious. The same way more food eliminates hunger, more water eliminates thirst, more money eliminates financial anxiety. Except something strange happens around 100,000. The anxiety doesn't disappear. It recalibrates. You're not worried about rent anymore. Now you're worried about whether you're saving enough for retirement, whether you can afford a house in a decent neighborhood, whether you're falling behind your peers who seem to be doing better. Then at 500,000, then at 5 million. The feeling scales, the numbers change, the anxiety stays constant. 54% of households earning over $500,000 annually report feeling financially insecure. Not struggling, not poor, insecure. The exact same word someone making 50,000 uses. The exact same feeling, just with different triggers. The person making 50,000 worries about making rent. The person making 500,000 worries about private school tuition and whether they can afford the house in the right zip code. The person making 5 million worries about whether they're diversified enough and whether they'll make partner or the Forbes list. Different numbers. Same anxiety. Same sense that if they just had a bit more, everything would be fine. How is that possible? How do you make 10 times more and feel exactly as insecure as you did at a tenth of the income? Because the feeling doesn't disappear with more money. It scales with it. It adjusts. It recalibrates to whatever your new reality becomes. Your brain doesn't process absolute amounts. It processes relative positions. And the more you make, the more you're exposed to people who make even more, which resets what feels like enough. This isn't a character flaw. It's not weakness or lack of gratitude or poor perspective. It's arithmetic. And most people never see the equation they're running in their heads. Munger reduces it to a formula. Happiness equals reality minus expectations. Not happiness as in moment-to-moment pleasure. Not the joy of eating good food or spending time with people you love. Happiness as in that background sense of contentment, that feeling of having enough, of being okay with where you are. Reality is what you have, your income, your assets, your actual circumstances, the numerator in the equation. Expectations is what you think you need, what you believe would be sufficient, what you've decided is the threshold for okay, the denominator. Subtract expectations from reality, and you get your happiness number, your sense of whether you have enough. When you make 50,000 and expect 50,000 to be sufficient, you get zero. Zero isn't misery. Zero is contentment. Zero is enough. You're not ahead. You're not behind. You're okay. You can pay your bills. You can save a bit. You're not stressed about money every day. When you make 5 million but expect 10 million because your college roommate has 15 and you can't let him win because everyone in your neighborhood has at least 10, because you read that anyone serious should have 8 figures by 50, you get negative 5 million. Negative 5 million is misery. Even with $5 million in the bank, even with more wealth than 99% of humans who've ever lived. The denominator exceeds the numerator. The gap is negative. You feel behind. You feel insufficient. You feel like you're failing at something important, not because your reality is bad, because your expectations are calibrated to someone else's reality. When you make 100 million but expect 200 because you know 3 people with $1 billion, because you started late and feel behind, because your company could have been worth more if you'd held out, because there's always someone with more, you get negative 100 million, the most miserable number yet. Even with generational wealth sitting in your account, even with the freedom to do whatever you want for the rest of your life. See the pattern? The problem isn't the numerator. The problem is the denominator grows faster, always, automatically, without you consciously deciding to raise it. Here's the brutal math. If your expectations grow 15% annually, which is conservative once you start making real money and seeing what others have, and your wealth grows 12% annually, which is aggressive and requires significant skill and luck, you're getting poorer psychologically every single year. Year 1, you make 1 million and expect 1 million. You're at zero, content. Year 2, you make 1.12 million, but your expectations grew to 1.15 million. You're now at negative 30,000 psychologically. Year 3, you make 1.25 million. Expectations are now 1.32 million. You're at negative 70,000. The gap widens every year. Your bank account grows. Your net worth climbs. Your success by every external measure compounds. And you feel worse. Year after year. Because the gap between reality and expectations is widening, not closing. That's not an opinion. That's not a philosophical position on materialism versus fulfillment. That's just arithmetic. The math of a denominator that inflates faster than the numerator can grow, and nobody sees it. Because we're all trained to look at the wrong variable. We optimize reality, work harder, make more money, build more wealth, increase the numerator, grind for the promotion, network for the next opportunity, invest for better returns. All numerator work. But expectations inflate automatically, silently, without conscious effort. You make 100,000 and 500,000 seems like enough. You make 500,000 and 2 million seems like enough. You make 2 million and 10 million seems like enough. The goalpost moves itself every single time you get close. It recalculates based on what everyone around you has, based on what seems normal at your new level, based on what you now think someone like you should have. The comparison happens automatically. The recalibration is involuntary. You can't solve a denominator problem by increasing the numerator. The denominator adjusts to whatever the numerator becomes, plus 20%. Always 20% ahead, always just out of reach. This isn't philosophical, it's psychological. And there are 3 specific biases that guarantee it happens to everyone. Munger identified 25 psychological biases that systematically corrupt human judgment, get in the way of rational thinking, make us do things that don't serve us. 3 of them, working together, mathematically guarantee that you'll never feel like you have enough, no matter how much you make. First bias, social comparison tendency. You don't measure wealth in absolutes. Your brain doesn't work that way. It can't. Absolute numbers are meaningless without context. $5 million is a lot compared to what? To 50,000? Yes. To 50 million? No. Your brain needs a reference point. And the reference point it chooses automatically, without asking your permission, is other people. You don't think I have $5 million and process that as a standalone fact. You think I have $5 million and my neighbor has 8 and my brother has 3 and my college roommate has 20. The comparison happens automatically, instantly, before you're even aware it's happening. And here's the critical part that makes this so destructive. You always compare up, never down. Your brain has a bias toward upward comparison. You have 5 million. Your brain doesn't think about the billions of people with less. Doesn't calculate that you have more than 99% of humans who've ever lived. Doesn't feel gratitude for being in the top fraction of a percent. It thinks about your roommate with 20 million. It thinks about the guy at work who made partner first. It thinks about the neighbor who just bought the bigger house. It finds someone ahead of you, always, automatically, and uses them as the reference point for whether you're doing okay, which means your expectations, the denominator in that equation, are set not by your circumstances, but by the circumstances of whoever's above you. The goalpost isn't anchored to your reality. It's anchored to someone else's reality. Someone who, by definition of being the person you're comparing yourself to, has more than you do. That's why the goalpost moves. Because as you climb, as you make more and accumulate more, you encounter new people. People at the next level. People with bigger numbers. And your brain automatically recalibrates what enough means based on what they have, not based on what you need, not based on what would actually make you happy, based on what they have. You make 50,000 and compare yourself to people making 50 to 75,000. You make 500,000 and compare yourself to people making 500,000 to 1 million. You make 5 million and suddenly you're in rooms with people who have 20, 50, 100 million, and your brain recalibrates. Again, automatically. The denominator resets based on your peer group, and your peer group is always people slightly ahead of you, because those are the people you're trying to keep up with, the people you measure yourself against, the people who make you feel like you're winning or losing at life. Second bias, envy. Munger called it the only one of the deadly sins that's no fun at all. Gluttony, you enjoy the food. Lust, you enjoy the pleasure. Greed gives you the dopamine rush of acquisition, of getting something new. But envy, pure suffering. No upside, just pain. Envy is pain at someone else's success. Not a minor concern. Not abstract worry, pain. Physical, emotional, psychological pain. Envy hurts. And worse, it hurts more than your own success helps you. Your friend sells his startup for 50 million. Nothing about your life has changed. Your income hasn't dropped. Your savings didn't decrease. Your job didn't get worse. On paper, you're in the exact same position you were before he sold. But something has changed psychologically. You feel worse, significantly worse, because his success makes your life, which was fine yesterday, feel like failure today. The comparison is automatic. The pain is real. And it's stronger than the pleasure you get from your own successes. This is the asymmetry that makes envy so destructive. 50 million doesn't make him twice as happy as 25 million would have. But 50 million makes you feel like you're worth half of what you thought you were worth yesterday. The pain scales differently than the pleasure. And here's where envy destroys that equation, that happiness equals reality minus expectations formula. Envy doesn't just fail to add to reality, it subtracts from it, actively, in real time. You make 5 million annually, your friend makes 8. Your income didn't drop to 2 million, but psychologically, you're processing it as if it did. Envy takes 5 million and recalculates it as 5 million minus the pain of watching someone else make 8, which functionally feels like 2 or 3 million, maybe less. The denominator, your expectations, stays the same, but the numerator, your reality, shrinks, not actually, psychologically, which is what matters for your sense of having enough. The gap widens. The negative number gets bigger. You feel more miserable, more behind, more insufficient, and you can't stop it. This isn't a choice. You can't decide not to feel envy the same way you can't decide not to feel pain when you touch something hot. It's a bias. It's automatic. It's hardwired into human psychology. Munger spent decades studying it, understanding it, trying to build systems to mitigate it, and still said it's one of the hardest to overcome. Third bias, deprival superreaction tendency. Loss hurts 2 to 3 times more than an equivalent gain feels good. This is one of the most well-documented findings in behavioral psychology. Your brain is asymmetric. It weighs losses heavier than gains, which means once you have something, you can't go backward. Once you upgrade to the bigger house, you can't downgrade without it feeling like punishment. Once you have the car, the status, the lifestyle, the zip code, you can't simplify without feeling deprived, without feeling like you're losing something important. This is why lifestyle inflation is so dangerous. It's not just that you spend more, it's that you lock yourself into a new baseline, and that baseline becomes non-negotiable. Reducing it feels like loss, and loss hurts more than the original gain felt good. You make 500,000 and spend 400,000, maintaining a lifestyle that now feels mandatory. Private school, nice car, house in the right neighborhood, vacations that meet a certain standard. You didn't plan it this way, it just happened. Small upgrades over time, each one feeling reasonable, each one sticking. And now you can't go backward. You can't drop to spending 200,000, even though that would give you breathing room, flexibility, freedom, because dropping feels like losing, like deprivation, like punishment for something. Your brain treats spending 200,000 the same way it would treat losing 200,000 as a loss. And loss hurts. So you're stuck. Your expectations are locked at 400,000 minimum, probably higher, because of social comparison and envy. You need to make more to keep up, which means working more, optimizing for income above everything else, staying in the job even if you hate it, chasing the promotion even if it costs you time with family, because you can't go backward without feeling pain. This is the trap. The denominator is locked. You can't reduce expectations without triggering loss aversion. So the only way to feel better is to increase reality, make more, earn more, accumulate more, stay on the treadmill. Now watch what happens when all 3 biases work together. Social comparison sets your expectations based on people above you. Envy makes their success painful to you. Deprival prevents you from reducing your own expectations. You're trapped in a system where the goalpost is always moving based on other people. Their success hurts you more than your success helps you, and you can't step backward without feeling loss. Munger called this the Lollapalooza effect. When multiple biases push in the same direction, the result isn't additive, it's multiplicative. It compounds. The effect is exponentially stronger than any single bias would create. Social comparison alone would be manageable. You'd compare yourself to others, realize it's irrational, adjust. Envy alone would be painful, but containable. You'd feel bad when others succeed, recognize the feeling, work through it. Loss aversion alone would make you reluctant to simplify, but not impossible. But all three together, you're locked in. The treadmill runs itself. You're not choosing to run faster. The biases are choosing for you, and most people never see it. Never understand why they feel increasingly anxious despite making more every year. Never realize they're trying to solve a denominator problem with a numerator solution. This isn't theory. Here's what it looks like when people with infinite resources still can't get off the treadmill. When the equation breaks down completely despite having numbers that should make the denominator irrelevant. Tech founder, 43 years old, net worth around $150 million after selling his company 3 years ago. Set for life. Set for his kids' lives. Set for his grandkids' lives if he wanted. Could stop working tomorrow. Could spend $100,000 a month for the next 30 years without touching principal. Reality equals 150 million. That's the numerator. Except his co-founder from a different company, someone he worked with a decade ago, sold his business for 400 million. His roommate from Stanford sold for 600 million. And his current neighbor, the guy 2 houses down, just bought a Gulfstream. Expectations recalibrated to 400 million minimum. That's the denominator. 150 minus 400 equals negative 250 million. Despite having $150 million, he's psychologically 250 million in the hole. The math says he's poor, insufficient, behind. So he starts another company. Not because he needs money, not because he has some burning passion project, because he's behind, because he can't let his co-founder be ahead of him, because he needs to close the gap, because the scoreboard says he's losing. 70-hour weeks at 43, stress levels through the roof, marriage strained, missing his kids growing up, not talking to his daughter because he's always in meetings, not seeing his son's games because he's on planes, not present for any of it. Not because he needs more money to be okay, not because 150 million isn't enough to live well, because someone else has more. And that makes him not okay. That makes 150 million feel like failure. Same equation, same denominator problem, just with more zeros. The numbers are absurd. The psychology is identical to someone making 50,000 comparing themselves to someone making 75,000. Exact same feeling, exact same anxiety, just with commas in different places. Case 2, hedge fund manager, 61 years old, net worth somewhere north of 2 billion. Not 100 million, not 500 million, 2 billion, with a B. More money than he could spend in 20 lifetimes. More than his children could spend. More than his grandchildren could spend. More than any rational calculation of enough could possibly justify needing. But his peer group, the other fund managers he compares himself to, includes 5 people with net worths over 5 billion. And in that world, in rooms where everyone's a billionaire, 2 billion is small. It's the bottom of the range. It makes you the poorest person in the room. And his ego, his sense of self-worth, his entire identity for 40 years has been tied to winning that game, being the best, being at the top, not at the bottom looking up at 5 people who beat him. So he keeps working, keeps optimizing, keeps chasing the next 100 million, even though the next 100 million changes literally nothing about his life. Can't buy him anything he doesn't already have. Can't give him any freedom he doesn't already possess. Can't make his life materially better in any measurable way. Quote from a dinner, something he said to a friend. At this level, it's not about the money. It's about the scoreboard. 61 years old, $2 billion, still measuring himself against other people's numbers, still feeling insufficient because 5 people have more. He worked until 65, refused to retire, refused to slow down. Heart attack at 67, died at 68 with a net worth around $4 billion. $4 billion. Twice what he had at 61. An objectively meaningless difference in terms of life quality, life options, or life satisfaction. But the scoreboard showed he won. He passed 2 of the 5 people ahead of him. He moved up the rankings. He died winning. And that mattered to him more than health, more than time, more than being present for the last decade of his life. Here's the pattern in every case. The goalpost is always just beyond reach. Not because the amount is mathematically insufficient, because the people around them have more, and comparison is automatic. Social comparison recalibrates what enough means. Envy makes their success painful. Loss aversion prevents stepping back. The treadmill runs itself. When you make 50,000 and everyone around you makes 50,000, the comparison is flat. You're in the middle of the distribution. You feel okay. When you make 50 million and everyone around you makes 50 million, the comparison is still flat, still in the middle, still okay. But when you make 50 million and your social circle includes 3 people with 200 million, you're back to feeling insufficient, back to being at the bottom of your peer group, back to feeling behind. Despite having $50 million, despite being in the top fraction of a percent globally, different numbers, same psychology, same inability to define enough, same sense that just a bit more would solve it, and then finding out, after getting that bit more, that enough moved again, recalibrated again, still out of reach. The tragedy isn't that they're rich and miserable, though that's tragic enough. The tragedy is they're sacrificing real life for imaginary numbers. Time with family traded for meetings. Health traded for stress. Peace traded for achievement. All for a score that resets every time they level up. All for a denominator that adjusts automatically to make sure they never feel like they've arrived. Most people don't learn this until it's too late to change it. Until they're 67 having a heart attack, realizing the scoreboard didn't matter. Until they're 70 looking back and seeing they missed their kids growing up for numbers that never made them happy. Charlie Munger figured it out earlier. Made a different choice. Decided consciously what enough meant instead of letting the biases decide for him. Charlie Munger didn't grow up rich. No trust fund, no inheritance, built his wealth slowly over decades. Law practice in Los Angeles, small real estate deals. Early investments that took years to compound. Nothing dramatic, nothing overnight, just steady accumulation over 20, 30 years. By the 1970s, he had real wealth. Millions of dollars. Not tens of millions yet, not hundreds of millions, but enough. Enough to live well, enough to invest seriously, enough to never have to work again if he didn't want to. Reality was measured in millions. That was his numerator. And he made a decision that most people in his position don't make. A conscious, deliberate decision that went against every bias, every social pressure, every expectation. He decided what enough meant for him personally, defined it explicitly, and then stopped optimizing for more. Not stopped working, he kept working into his 90s. Not stopped investing, he kept investing, kept learning, kept engaging with markets and businesses. But stopped optimizing his entire life for maximum wealth accumulation above all else, stopped making every decision through the filter of, will this make me richer? He looked at that equation. Happiness equals reality minus expectations, and realized something most people never see. You can't control reality easily. Making more money is hard. Building wealth takes time, skill, luck. The numerator is difficult to move, but you can control the denominator completely. Expectations are entirely within your control. You set them. You choose them. You decide what enough means. His formula wasn't a number, wasn't 10 million or 50 million or 100 million. Numbers are meaningless because they're relative. They adjust based on context. His formula was a question. Can I do what I want, when I want, with whom I want? If yes, that's enough. If no, identify the specific constraint. Figure out what's actually preventing that freedom. And fix that constraint, which turned out almost never to be needing millions more dollars. Can you take time off without financial pressure? If yes, you have enough. If no, the constraint probably isn't $0 in savings. It's probably closer to, I need 6 months of expenses saved. Not, I need 5 million more. Can you turn down work you don't want to do? If yes, enough. If no, the constraint isn't your bank account. It's your spending level. Your lifestyle requires income you can't walk away from. The solution isn't making more. It's spending less. Reducing the denominator instead of chasing the numerator. Can you pursue projects that interest you without worrying about whether they generate income? If yes, enough. If no, calculate the actual gap. How much do you need to not worry? Usually a number much smaller than you think. Usually possible to reach much faster than building generational wealth. Notice what's not in the formula. Other people, what they have, what they make, what they drive, what they think is impressive, what society says is successful. Comparison is absent. Because once comparison enters the equation, enough becomes impossible to define. The denominator becomes infinite. There's always someone with more. Always someone who recalibrates what you think you need. Always someone whose success makes yours feel insufficient. Munger cut comparison out of the equation entirely. Defined enough for himself, by himself, based on his actual life and his actual desires. Not based on what anyone else had or thought or achieved, and then stopped caring what anyone else accumulated after that. The result? Decades of contentment. Not happiness in the sense of perpetual pleasure or endless dopamine hits. Contentment in the sense of not feeling like something's missing, not feeling behind, not feeling anxious about money despite working in finance for 60 years, despite being surrounded by billionaires, despite having every opportunity and every temptation to keep chasing more. He still made more money. Partnership with Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway, investments that compounded into billions. But making money stopped being the point. The point was freedom, intellectual freedom, time freedom. Freedom to work on what interested him without worrying about optimizing for returns. And once he had that freedom, accumulating more wealth didn't increase freedom, just increased a number. A number he'd already decided didn't matter beyond a certain threshold. He proved the inverse. You don't get contentment by increasing reality. You get it by controlling expectations, by setting enough yourself instead of letting social comparison set it for you. By deciding what matters to you instead of accepting what society says should matter, and controlling expectations means ignoring everyone else's reality entirely, not just trying to ignore it. Actually building a life where comparison becomes irrelevant because you're not measuring yourself against anyone else. Munger's most useful principle for when you're stuck. Invert. Always invert. When you can't solve a problem going forward, reverse the question. Attack it from the opposite direction. Find what you want by identifying what you don't want. Find the solution by identifying how you'd cause the problem. Standard question when thinking about wealth and contentment. How much do I need to be happy? How much until I feel like I have enough? What's the number that makes everything okay? That question is unanswerable, impossible to solve going forward. Because, as we've established with the equation and the biases, your brain recalibrates need based on what people around you have. The target moves, the number adjusts. What seems like enough today becomes insufficient tomorrow when you see someone with more. The question has no stable answer. So, invert it. What if I stopped here? What if my net worth froze today at whatever it is right now and never grew again? What if this is all I ever have? Forever. Now ask honestly. Can I eat? Yes. Can I keep a roof over my head? Yes. Can I maintain basic health? Yes. Can I choose how I spend most of my days? Probably yes, or very close to it. So if those answers are yes, why aren't you content right now? Why doesn't it feel like enough? Honest answer, the real answer, underneath all the justifications, because someone else has more, because you expected to hit a different number by now, because you thought you'd be further along, because your peer group makes you feel behind, because society tells you success looks different, because you're comparing yourself to people who have more and it makes your amount feel insufficient. Look at those reasons. None of them are reality problems. Your reality provides food, shelter, health, time. The basics are covered. Many of the luxuries are covered. You can do most of what you want to do. All of those reasons are expectations, problems. The gap between what you have and what you think you should have. The denominator exceeding the numerator. Not because your numerator is actually insufficient, because your denominator is calibrated to someone else's numerator. The equation again. Happiness equals reality minus expectations. You've been trying to solve this your entire life by increasing reality. Make more money, get the promotion, build more wealth, hit the next milestone, move the numerator up, work harder, optimize better, grind more. But you can't solve an expectations problem with a reality solution, because expectations adjust automatically to whatever reality becomes. It's built into the psychology. Social comparison recalibrates the denominator based on your peer group. You make more, your peer group upgrades, the denominator increases. You make 10 times more, you're around people who have 10 times more, the denominator increases proportionally. The gap between numerator and denominator stays constant or widens, almost never closes. The only actual solution is the denominator. Reduce expectations. Not by lowering your standards for life quality, not by accepting deprivation or suffering, by lowering your standards for comparison. Stop measuring yourself against other people. Stop letting their numbers determine your sense of enough. Measure yourself against yesterday, against last year, against your own trajectory. Am I better off than I was? If yes, celebrate that. If no, fix what's broken. But don't measure against someone else's trajectory, because their life isn't yours and their numbers aren't relevant to your contentment. Stop measuring success by net worth. Net worth is a score. Scores are for games. Life isn't a game. Measure success by freedom, by agency, by ability to do what matters to you. Can you do what you want? If yes, you've won. If no, identify the specific constraint and fix it, which turns out almost never to be need millions more dollars. Usually need to reduce fixed costs, or need to build specific skill, or need to change career, Real constraints with real solutions that don't require getting rich. Stop letting your brain recalibrate enough automatically based on what people around you have. Your brain will do this unless you consciously override it. So override it. Decide consciously what enough means for you. Write it down. Make it explicit. When you hit it, recognize that you hit it. Stop optimizing for more just because more is available. Enough is enough. That's what the word means. That's the whole game. Reduce expectations. Increase gratitude for what you actually have instead of focusing on what you lack compared to others. Let other people chase their numbers while you enjoy yours. Let them optimize for more while you optimize for enough. Will you actually do this? Probably not. Most people won't. Because the treadmill is addictive, the chase feels productive, comparison feels natural. Just one more seems reasonable every single time. The biases are powerful and automatic, and they've been running your life for decades. But the people who figure this out early, who solve the equation by controlling the denominator instead of chasing the numerator, get decades of contentment, decades of not feeling behind, decades of enough being enough. They still build wealth, but wealth stops being the point. Freedom becomes the point. And they have freedom much earlier than the people chasing numbers. The people who don't figure it out spend their entire lives running, chasing a target that moves every time they get close, working 70-hour weeks at 65, having heart attacks at 67, dying at 68, realizing the numbers didn't matter, realizing they sacrificed everything real for something imaginary. Your choice. But choose consciously. Don't let the biases choose for you. Don't let social comparisons set your expectations. Don't let envy determine your contentment. Don't let loss aversion lock you into a lifestyle you can't escape. Your psychology is engineered to keep you running unless you deliberately step off the treadmill. Step off. Define enough. Stop when you hit it. That's the only way this ends. The richest people aren't those who have the most. They're those who need the least.